Spoiler alert, this is a one-shot for Frozen 2.
In case you're wondering, why are we doing a one-shot on Frozen 2? It's because you may remember that the cutoff for the Disney bracket was the new Aladdin, which was released in May of 2019, because unfortunately, if we just continued to add every Disney movie ever to the bracket, we'd never finish.
It's infinite. Disney's infinite.
Right. Which would be sad, because we want to get you an answer on what is the bestest Disney movie ever. So, what we're going to do is occasionally we're going to do some one-shots on new Disney movies, and today's the first one with Frozen 2.
Frozen 2 was so good!
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So we're just going to, run through the scoring, essentially, and just, talk about the elements of the movie, and at the end, we'll tell you what the score would have been, and so you can get an idea of, how Frozen 2 would have done had it been included on the bracket.
There's a hair on my nose. Sorry. You're gonna get a sneak peek into kind of, what we do when we grade these movies, so
totally.
you can kind of see what we're doing. Now, I need to address the elephant in the room. I hope you like our onesies.
Okay, so one of the first things we talk about is the message. Did it have a message? Was it a good message? How well did they get that message across? And, can anybody kind of pick up on what the message is? So, what did you think?
We actually had different messages, almost, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of talked about how it's, not leaving people behind and, the ties of family bonds. And I gave it a little bit of a lower score than Gabby because I felt that there was a part in the movie where Elsa says she needs to go off by herself, and so she makes an ice boat and puts Anna and Olaf into it and pushes them away.
Yeah.
And then both Anna and, surprisingly, Olaf get angry. But then once they find Elsa again, then they're not mad anymore. I feel like they should have capitalized on that raw human emotion, human and snowman emotion that they had, and they could have had something really good there. I understand that it's supposed to be a kids movie, but I thought they lost a little bit, just kind of, brushing that under the rug a little bit.
Yeah, and I gave it a high, but not quite a perfect score, because the message that I mostly took away from the movie was kind of the search for identity, and how kind of we're always searching for ourselves and we can find everything we need inside us. And I felt that several characters kind of went through this journey through the course of the movie, mostly Elsa, but also Anna and Kristoff, and where I felt that there was room for growth still was that kind of similar to what Jake said. I felt that Kristoff's arc didn't get resolved as much as Elsa and Anna's did. So great messages, but it felt like Kristoff started the journey, but
they were
really
lost near
it.
the end, right
Yeah,
near the end, yeah.
Exactly. So that was message. Next was audience width.
Which, you gave it the exact same score as Frozen 1, correct? I gave it, I don't remember my exact score for either of them, but I think it was a little bit higher, because I believe that because the nature of a sequel, people think, at least I think this way, so I think other people must, it's a sequel, then it must have been good enough for them to make a second movie, so let's go see it. And people were talking about it, to my surprise, that, I went to go see Frozen, so...
Yeah, I mostly gave it the same score as the original Frozen, because I think it's still technically aimed at that same fairly small demographic, and that it will also suffer from some of the stigma, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, that comes with it being a movie geared toward a specific demographic. Yeah. That's all. Pretty simple. Next, we talked about music. Jake and I unanimously agreed that the music in this movie was awesome.
I gave it a perfect score.
I didn't give it quite a perfect score, and I think my reasoning is actually kind of interesting, and it's a little music nerdy of me, so it comes definitely from my background as a music human. I just thought that it was a little advanced maybe for small humans, and I'm talking this is super nerdy, but the form and the structure of the pieces and some of the language I think might be a little harder to grasp onto. Still super catchy, but if I'm even comparing some of Into the Unknown, even though I prefer Into the Unknown to Let It Go, I think a small kid's gonna latch on to Let It Go
much
way easier than Into the Unknown. That's all.
My reason was much more trivial. I thought to myself, would I play this on Spotify while I'm studying for something? And I said, yes, I would, right next to Be Prepared from Lion King. So that's why I got a perfect score.
Yeah. Next we talk about the protagonist, and this was a really interesting conversation that we had. You can share your thoughts.
My score was a couple points lower than Gabby's. Spoilers, she gave it a perfect score. I didn't. I gave it a 7, I believe, because I felt that the way the message blended with the protagonists, it really brought their score down for me, because I felt that they really were setting up these awesome arcs and, this transformation, which Olaf kept talking about in the actual movie, and then they just kind of cut it off right at the end.
Yeah.
And I saw that dynamic character growth happening,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was dropped. So they were good enough protagonists for me to have interest in them and to want to follow them, but that circle wasn't completed. That hero's journey kind of ended at the later steps and never made it in full circle.
Yeah. And I didn't quite integrate like my conceptions of the protagonist and the message as much as Jake did. I definitely agree with what he said about Anna and the anger thing. I think that was a really great point. But I thought about a lot of, not the anger part, but like Anna's journey to finding an identity separate from Elsa. It was really what I focused on when I graded her part of the protagonist. And then Elsa's journey, I think, is just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave them a perfect score. I didn't give them a perfect score, though. I don't remember what my score for Frozen 1 was, but for the original, they didn't get a perfect score. They did in this one from me. Next up, antagonist.
Easy category.
Pretty pitiful in this situation. I mean, this movie doesn't need it.
It doesn't.
According to our criteria,
it was the nature spirits in the like North people's, forest.
Yes.
But they weren't very interesting, and they weren't really an antagonist. It was more just an inconvenience.
Right, and so much of this movie is about inner conflict, which, like, technically, if you get into, like, all the nitty-gritty about, like, literature and stuff, like, self versus self is a conflict type. But when we look at Disney movies, like, external protagonists, like, a person versus another person or groups of people, comes across just really well in the Disney paradigm.
And it's much easier for a small kid
Yeah.
to grasp onto, oh, that's a bad man or woman that the good guys are fighting.
Yeah.
So that's the bad guy. Don't do that. Like, don't kill puppies. Like,
Right. And I mean, like, there's just so many villains that we just love to hate. Like, one of the reasons Lion King got a perfect score, and we talked about this in the video.
Last video that will be uploaded.
Yeah, the last video. And why Lion King ultimately triumphed over Winnie the Pooh was because, like, Scar is such a strong antagonist, and in Winnie the Pooh, even less than Frozen. There's less conflict, I'd say, in Winnie the Pooh than in Frozen.
And watching that villain's plans first come together and then just unravel is one of the things that makes the plot arc fascinating for a Disney movie.
Yeah. So, antagonist, not really anything going on in Frozen 2 regarding that, but sidekicks.
Sidekicks. I mean, you brought up a good point, and I probably should not have been blinded by Sven and Olaf, because I gave them a 5 out of 5, you gave them a 4 out of 5. But Gabby brought up a great point that they just weren't as integral to the plot as they were in the original movie.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Can't change my score. Don't necessarily regret my score because they're great characters. Olaf has a great song. Sven sings.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the growth that we've seen in Olaf since the first movie, like, they did a lot of, I think, awesome things with Olaf in particular in the second one. So, like, yeah, from, like, a character standpoint, no complaints there. But, yeah, the fact that they, in a lot of ways, you probably could have taken them out of the movie and the plot still would have been the same. Lost them just 1 point from me.
Yeah.
So that brings us then to overall enjoyment.
And I mean, it was a 10 and a 9. Like, it was a good movie. I didn't give it a perfect score because the faults with the message just kind of kept ringing in my ears, and it wouldn't allow me to give it that perfect score. But I do not deny that it was a good Disney movie and a good movie.
Yeah.
Anyone can see it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would definitely watch it again.
Oh, yeah.
Probably gonna dive more into the music for sure. I liked the music. I mean, like, going in, I was a little nervous about the music, I'm not gonna lie. Music's super important to me, and, like, when you have knockout hits like the original Frozen has, that's a lot to live up to in a sequel. And I think they did a good job.
Well, and it was brought up to us that, other people went into this movie, they're like, it's gonna be really hard to top the original Frozen 1 music, but the score did hold up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you look at the total...
Yeah, Frozen 2 actually eked out a couple points ahead of the original Frozen.
2.5, because I think it was 46.5 for the original one.
Yeah, and a 49 for Frozen 2. So, like, not a huge difference, but, like, and that's kind of an opinion I feel like I've heard a lot from people, and the general buzz about this movie is that a lot of people say that it is compared to a lot of sequels, actually better than the original, which I don't think happens that often.
Yeah. So I really do recommend it.
Highly recommend. Got a few questions, so like if you ever figure out like who exactly the voice calling Elsa is, I'm like unsure if it's supposed to be like
Theory?
the spirit of their dead mom, or if it's like supposed to be Elsa's
inner voice
like herself. And also if you ever find the answer to like how her parents got out of the mist when everybody else got trapped, let me know, because those are the lingering plot questions that I have. But like based on the way we score, like we don't score that way for plot, so I didn't take points off for that. But
now,
just
if you excuse
questions.
me, I'm gonna go listen to Into the Unknown.